Hello everybody, we are back with day 13 of WordPress for Designers on blog.themeforest.net, and today is the day, as promised, that we will just jump straight into some WordPress code and start building our paper business theme that we've been discussing in the past, in the previous episodes. So, a quick overview of what we'll do today. The first thing we'll do is kind of get a basic theme reset going with some basic pre-made theme files for us, so we don't have to worry about all the mundane code and making all the brand new files. And we'll look into that. And then once we get our theme reset up, we're going to make the front page static. Unlike most WordPress blogs that you see that have the blog posts on the home page on the index, we're going to use our WordPress install and make it a static home page, and then our blog and our blog posts will be on a different page, obviously under blog, which is kind of how this design is set up. So it's kind of a common question people ask, is how do we make WordPress more of a static CMS? And this is really kind of easy to do. So we'll do that, and then we will have kind of a mini CSS tutorial as we just get started on the header, the logo, the background, and the navigation, and we will kind of make room for our slider, and that's probably about as far as we'll get today. So we'll just take this one thing at a time. I'm working with MAMP, my local server. If you missed day one, I explained how to install that, so you might want to check that out. But what I'm going to do is go to Firefox, and if you go to elliottjstocks.com, and I'll have this link below. Quite a while ago, he released this kind of a WordPress, it's not really kind of a WordPress theme that's just a blank canvas. It's a starting point for anybody that's about to develop a theme. And what I mean by that is it has all those theme files like header, footer, 404, archives, all the basics, but it has absolutely no markup. Just the the core loops that would come with each page, and the get footer and the get header. And that's just it's really a nice time saver. And a lot of people that work with WordPress end up using some kind of reset. So if you scroll down, you can download it here. I want to note, you'll see it says for 2.6.2, and we're doing this with 2.7. Just from experience, I know that this works perfectly fine with 2.7, as I've used it in plenty of themes. But if you see the update right here, it says for everyone who keeps asking, this version works fine with WordPress 2.7. So if you were worried about that, worry no more, because that will not be an issue. And one more thing I want to touch on is, if you've heard of like kind of theme frameworks like this, there's one called Thematic by Ian Stewart, which is really nice. And if you're wondering kind of what's the difference between Starkers and Thematic and what this is it says it perfectly right here. It says, if you want something super simple to start out with, strip down to the bare minimum of markup, use Starkers. If you want the power of dynamic class names, microformats, and some existing markup and styles, use Thematic. Well, we just want super simple base files to work with, so we don't have to go through all the redundancy again. So we are going to use Starkers. And again, we'll go over exactly what it is in case you're still confused. But go ahead and download it for now. I've already done so. So I'm going to open up Coda, and you'll see I have a new WordPress install on my local host under the directory of Paper Business. If I go to WP Content and Themes, you'll see the Classic and the Default theme, which come with all the every bundle of WordPress. And I'll go to my desktop, I'll click on my Starkers download, and then you can see I'm going to rename this, obviously, to Paper Business, which is the name of our theme. And I'm going to drop it into our themes folder, and and there we go. Basic install of our theme. We'll activate it in just a second. But yeah, this is what Starkers is. If you go into Paper Business, you see all these theme files: 404, archives, comments, functions, index, links, page. And if we click on one of these, like I don't know, page, you'll see it's nothing but the absolute bare basics that we would pretty much be adding anyway. It's get header, get sidebar, get footer, and then a basic loop. and this is just going to make it really convenient for us, so we don't have to come over here and create every single page with just the basic markup. So this has already kind of been done for us and gives us a nice starting point. I do want to go over okay, well, let's go ahead and look at the the screenshot is the default one that comes with it. We want to replace that with our own. So if I go to Finder, Desktop, I thought I had a screenshot there. Yeah. Okay, and I just drag a little screenshot I've already made, and I will replace it. Okay, and you can see the screenshot just looks something like that. It's 300 by 255 pixels, if you were wondering. But when you get a chance, you can make your own little screenshot there. And then the next thing I'll open up is style.css, and if you remember that this is where we give WordPress all the information about our theme. So let's go ahead and fill that out now. Our theme's name is Paper Business. For the theme URI, we'll just put blog.themeforest.net. Description will be a WordPress theme for the WordPress for Designers video series. Simple enough. Version 1, and it's compatible with WordPress 2.7 Plus, which is what we'll be making our theme for. Author, just put Drew Douglas, and we'll give Jeffrey here some credit for the design. And author URI, I'll just put my personal website, and then some of the tags that we can add. If you wanted to put this in a directory, a WordPress directory, obviously we're not going to be doing that, but just to fill it out, we could do paper and business, I guess, would be two nice tags. We'll save that. And now, WordPress will be able to access our basic information. So let's discuss kind of the layout more of Starkers and how this is all set up. Our main style.css, which is what we just edited, is in the root of the theme files. Now inside the style folder is everything else that we'll kind of need. Some additional CSS files, some fonts which we don't have anything in. We can get rid of that later, but that's in case you wanted to store any fonts. And images, of course, we'll add those as we go along. But what I do want to talk about is this CSS folder here. And you can see we're using the @import to import the reset and something called typography and layout. So what do those do? Well, let's go to reset. Okay, reset, just a basic kind of CSS reset based upon the yahoo.com reset. And we can just keep that. It kind of takes the work out of putting any kind of reset in there. And if you have your own CSS reset you prefer to use, of course, go ahead and do what works for you. Typography.css is a little page that Elliot put and included, and besides giving all the headers a font weight of bold to make sure they're all coming off at cross-browser, okay, we want to come here and look at different kind of fonts that we could use and different mixtures. If you're not, if you just need a kind of a reference, you can use the typography.css. I won't be messing much with this file, but we can just leave it there for now. And lastly, let's go to layout.css. Now this comes with some, as it says, presentational classes that are generated by WordPress, so it's useful to have styles for them. So almost every WordPress installation will come with classes like align left, align right, align center, and these are just kind of classes that the users can use to easily adjust the styles and the look of their page without knowing too much. You'll also see a BR class of dirty little trick, and this is kind of just a way to clear any floats you have. As you know, there's many techniques, but we might use that sometime. And you set all divs to the position of relative. Now it's nice that he's done that, but that's kind of the only thing I don't like about this theme. Is I'd rather have full control over the position of my divs, and I wouldn't rather have them all be set to relative by default. So I'm just going to take that out and go ahead and save layout.css without that. So that said, let's go ahead and go into our theme. And you can see here's the default theme showing on our installation of a localhost at Paper Business, the directory we talked about, because we haven't activated our new theme yet. So let's go ahead and go down, refresh themes. Okay, we'll see available themes and Paper Business with our nice little screenshot, and a WordPress theme for designers, WordPress theme for the WordPress for Designers video series. Okay. And if you see here the preview, see how absolutely nothing is styled, and you can see how that kind of comes in with the blank theme that we're using right now. So we'll activate Paper Business. Okay, with our new theme activated, we can visit our site. Oops, I already have it open here. We'll just refresh. Okay, so not very much going on here. The next thing that we need to do is go into Coda, and we want to set up a page without touching index.php, which is going to serve as our blog home page. We want to just set up a custom page that will serve as our front page, our home static page. So if you go to page-custom.php, this is how you would make a custom page in WordPress. You just template name and a comment at the very top. Then we're just going to name this front page. And you can see the only thing this page is doing right now is getting the header and then grabbing the footer. And we will be able to insert like things like the slider in between here, and any other loops or things that we would need for the home page will go in between this get header and get footer. And the last thing we want to do is rename that from page custom to front_page or something of the likes. Okay, we got that. Now before we move on, I want to show you, if I go to Pages and click Edit, you'll see I've just already created our basic pages. If I go to the screenshot here, you see we have a home, about, services, portfolio, blog, contact. Just to save us some time here, and so I don't confuse anybody, I've already come in and made a bunch of them. So you might want to do that before we go on any farther. Just make a bunch of default pages here. And now we will scroll down to Settings and then Reading. Okay, now it says front page displays, and it's usually by default it's at your latest posts. What we're going to do is click a static page, and on the drop down for the front page we want home to be our front page, and we want the page named blog to hold our post, our individual blog posts. And so we'll click Save Changes. Okay, so now we're almost there to having a static home page. We know that we want our front page to be home. Now what we need to do is go into Pages, click Edit, and we'll edit our home page. And you can see I just have some default text here, and don't worry about the custom fields right now. We will touch on that later. And under template, it's usually going to be at default template, which would be page.php. But now that we know we want our home, any of this content is going to serve as our front page, we want to use our front page, our specific front page custom template. So we'll click Template, Front Page, and Update Page. Okay, now if we refresh, we can see now our home page has changed to just our header, our navigation, which is in our get header, and our footer. And if we go to Coda, that's exactly what we want. This is now, in essence, our front page, the get header and footer. So that's what we're going to focus on today. We have a static front page now. That was pretty simple. If I go to blog, you'll see there's our default blog post, and it has everything else here that a regular index.php file has by default. And we've easily kind of excuse me, we've easily made our homepage static here. So the next thing we need to do is kind of get the logo looking nice, and mess around with our header.php and our style.css file, and we're going to focus on, we're just going to take it from the top to the bottom here on our home page. So if we pull, I have the screenshots pulled up here, and we're going to be focusing on our paper business logo, our navigation, and we might touch on the slider today. It just depends on how far we get. And of course our background. So that said, we can get rid of our front page.php for now. Well, we know our front page, our home page, is pulling off, is saying get header. So we need to see what we're working here with header, and it's also getting our footer. So we'll open up footer, and lastly we will need our style.css so we can go ahead and start styling our theme. Well, the first thing that we want to do is set up some general styles here. So I'm going to try to keep this as organized as possible and comment it out as well. Type header styles. Now I'm going to say body, and we need to set the background to that noise that we sliced out in our last series. So we can do transparent URL style / images / background .jpg. We want it to repeat, and we want it to scroll. We'll go ahead and save that, and before I go any farther and forget, we need to actually put our images onto our thing here. So let me grab those, and I'll replace the images folder in here, and now you can see I have all my images to work with. Okay, so now we've set the body background to repeat both on the x-axis and y-axis, and that will give us our little noise that we chopped out earlier. Let's go ahead and set the color to white, any of the default font color, and the font family to Arial, and then fall back onto just a sans serif. But luckily for us, Arial is one of the most common, if not the most common, web font. So almost everybody should have the font that we're using. We can go ahead and save that, and let's go ahead and take a look at that, make sure everything turned out how we expected it to. And yeah, there's our repeating little blue background with our noise on it, and this will look a lot better when there's more content filling it in. So just follow along here. Now what we need to do is, if we look at the screenshots, everything here is centered. And I happen to know from measuring the PSD that all of the content is 800 pixels wide. So we need everything to be centered inside of a div, and inside and have a width of 800 pixels. So that's what we're going to do. So let's go into header.php, and let's give a div ID of wrap right underneath the body tag. We'll save that. Then we'll go into footer, and right before the closing body tag, we'll end our div, and we'll give a little comment to ourselves here, end wrap. And that way we know what's going on. So now all of our content on our is now wrapped within this div ID of wrap. And now what we can do, this should be general styles, not header styles. Okay. So now what we can do is give a div ID of wrap. We could say width 800 pixels, margin 0, auto. And that's all we need to do to center our content. Whoops. So if I refresh, okay, and there we go. So now no matter the monitor size, the content will be centered at 800 pixels width. Okay. Well, next we want to go ahead and get our logo and our navigation ready. So what I'm going to do is come down here, and I'm going to wrap the logo and the navigation inside an ID of header, as this will be will contain all of our header information here. We can kind of space this out some to keep some clean code. Okay, now I know we don't need the blog info description right now, so we can get rid of that. And now I'm going to give the H1, the header 1 tag, an ID of logo. And we could target it with just header H1, but I'd prefer just to work with an ID. Helps keep me organized, and it's just my preference of doing things. And then I'm going to scroll down to the unordered list here and give it an ID of nav. Okay, so now we have our logo and our navigation all inside of a div ID with header, and our H1 has an ID of logo, and our unordered list that contains our navigation has an ID of nav. Okay, now next thing you'll see is it says inside for our actual text we're just getting the blog info name. Now this is usually really helpful, as we don't even have to type anything in manually there. But we do need to get the paper from Paper Business to be a different font weight than Business. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to take out the blog info name. We're going to type in span paper, close the span, space, business. And that is going to let us style the paper separately from the business word. So go ahead and save that. And yeah, let's go ahead and make sure everything's still going okay, and then we'll start styling all that. Okay, you can see our blog info description disappeared. We have our ugly looking logo right now and our ugly looking navigation. Now what we need is for this logo to be down here a little bit with more of a margin, and for all of this navigation to be kind of over here to the right of the logo, and they need to be inline horizontally, not vertically like they are now, as seen in the screenshot. So let's just jump into our style.css and make this happen. The last general style I'm going to give this is for our anchor tags, and I'm just going to say text decoration none, because I do not want them to be underlined by default. Okay, and now we'll do header styles. This is going to be styling everything in our header, which is our logo and our navigation. We're going to go to our div ID of header, which is where all of our header is wrapped in, and we're just going to give it some basic margins right now. So we'll give it 40 pixels on the top, none on the right, 20 on the bottom, none on the left. Simple enough. Scroll down and we'll do H1 ID of logo. Okay. Now from just kind of experimenting and messing around, I know some of this stuff, but just follow along and then we'll look at the result. We need to work on the typography a little bit, so the letter spacing is actually going to be 1 pixel, which will give us some more spacing in between those individual letters and make it look more like the original PSD design. We need to float this left so we can have our navigation hanging to the right of it. We'll give it a margin of 80 pixels on the right, which will push away our navigation and give it some spacing away from our logo. Increase the font size to about 35 pixels. We're going to use a nice little text transform here, and we're going to say lowercase. Now we've already typed it lowercase in our header here, but let's go ahead and change it just to Paper Business. And in case anybody were to type it differently, and you wanted it to show up in search engines, would crawl it with uppercase instead of lowercase. And then we can use CSS to to handle the design aspect of our logo. So it's always just kind of nice to separate your CSS from your HTML, which is why we'll let our CSS take this and put it all into lowercase as it is in the final design. And lastly, we need to say font weight normal, because we only want the span tag that's inside of our ID of logo to have the bold font weight. So let's do that now. H1 ID of logo span. So any span that's inside the header 1 tag with the ID of logo is going to get a font weight of bold. Let's go ahead and save that and see what we're looking at. Okay, so we're getting there. Not quite there, but we're getting there. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to say H1 logo A. So any anchor tags inside of our logo header will have a color of white. And there you go. You can see that worked. And you know, I'm not the greatest designer, but I think that we got this part of our logo, the typography part, I think we got that looking pretty close to this. You know, I just kind of messed around with the letter spacing and the font weights, and it came out, you know, pretty nicely. So I'm glad we don't need to use an image for that. And again, hats off to Jeffrey for just, you know, using such simple fonts to make a great design. It's really a really talented designer. So let's move back into our CSS, and now we have all of our logos looking good. We have it where we want it. We have it the right spacing right here for it, but now we need to get this navigation looking better. Well, we'll just take that one at a time. We'll say unordered list with an ID of nav. Again, I'm going to mess with the letter spacing here and give it 1 pixel, as I think that just looks more like the actual design. I'm going to give it a line height of 50 pixels, and you'll see why a little later on. Give it a font size of 15 pixels. And go ahead and save that. Okay, and now for our lists inside our unordered lists, we want to float them to the left so they line up horizontally. We want to give them a display of inline to fix any float bugs that might come into play later. And we want to go ahead and give him a margin of 20 pixels on the right. And you'll notice I could have just done margin right. I prefer to kind of just do the shorthand margin like this all the time, even if I'm messing with just one property. And the reason being is because I can say I need some margins later on. I can just come back and, you know, if I need a 10 pixel margin on the top, I can just click, you know, hit 10 pixels. I don't have to type out margin top, you know, margin right. So that's why I do that, if you're wondering. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at that. Okay, nice. Looking a lot better. We still need to work on the color here of these links. One quick thing. Let's take out that line height of 50 pixels because I want you guys to understand why we're doing that. Let's just take it out and save it without it real quick. Okay. Now, don't worry about this the footer not clearing yet, but notice how the navigation, even though it's horizontally you know, positioned correctly, it needs to be, you know, in the middle here of paper business. It's too, you know, so we can just get that with the line height, say line height of 50 pixels, and we can kind of bring it down vertically here to line up more of where we want it with one of the S's in business. So, you know, that's one of the ways of doing that, and I'm sure that you could come up with a lot of more creative ways of getting that done, but I thought that was quick and easy. So now let's go down and say unordered list nav, and any list with the class of current page item, and then the anchor tag inside of that. And we're going to say border bottom 2 pixels solid, and it's going to be 6D8 CA4. And I went into Photoshop and got that out with the eyedropper tool, if you're wondering. I did not guess. And lastly, we just need to color the rest of the links. So then we'll just say, you know, unordered list nav, and any of the anchor links inside of that will be white. Okay, so we'll save that. We'll go over here. And now you can see that we have the, you know, the border on the current page item, the about, you know, none of the other ones have it, but everything now is white. I think the typography looks pretty close to it, you know, not exactly, but pretty close. So if you guys compare those two, I think that, you know, our logo and our navigation are looking pretty good. And of course, our logo, you know, is clickable. So if we go to about, don't worry about any of the styles right now, but you can see that we've used that current page item class um, to give a nice little border to the to the current page item. So that's how to get a static page in WordPress. What's going to happen next is we're going to go into front page, and we're going to create another custom page and include our slider here. And I think we're going to touch on that tomorrow because we kind of covered a lot of ground today. Anyway, yeah, next time we will touch on our slider. This will go in between the get header and get footer on our front page. And we will just, we won't touch on the slider. We will start building it. And that might take us 2 or 3 parts, but we'll just see, I guess we'll just see how it goes. So I hope all of you had a great Easter. If you have any questions, just ask. I'm just, kind of taking this a day at a time. So any comments or questions, suggestions, always appreciated. Hope you guys have a great day, and happy WordPress coding.